Hello again. A little over a month ago, I spoke to you about an upcoming project that I'm doing, and that is supporting elephant human relations aid in Namibia. So they are doing a 25th anniversary fundraising walk in Namibia. So just to give you the background, EHRA have been doing amazing work in Namibia, up in the kind of northern part of Namibia. And really, their focus is twofold. One is to keep an eye on the population of African desert elephants that are up there. And this is only one of two populations left of African desert elephants. Now, these elephants have quite a large range. They actually left Namibia at one point. Namibia, unfortunately, had all sorts of conflict going on in the 80s, and that happily stopped, and people moved back, but also the elephants moved back into northern Namibia. And the people who were living there at that time, most of them hadn't grown up with elephants, so they didn't know how to live with elephants. They didn't know what precautions to take, and it did lead to some conflict. And something that I've spoken about before that never occurred to me until I was there was that people or local people can regard the elephant almost like the boogeyman turning up. Elephants can travel a very large distance. They tend to do a lot of traveling at night. They're looking for food, obviously, and water. And as you might imagine, Namibia, it can be a very harsh place to live. It gets very hot. There's a lot of desert there. One of the things it's most famous for is a huge sand dune on what they call the Skeleton Coast. And it's called the Skeleton Coast because of all the shipwrecks there. And basically, it's a very harsh place and a very unforgiving place to try and make a living. So the local elephants do travel quite a long distance. And that means from the perspective of the people who live there, these elephants can just appear out of nowhere. Now, one of the problems with elephants, if you're near them, obviously they're quite large, and they also have quite poor eyesight, and they can be quite easily startled. And this generally is where conflict will arise. The elephant's startled by people suddenly appearing. The people can be equally as startled, but they are a lot smaller and therefore a lot more vulnerable. And unfortunately, a few people have been killed in these kinds of interactions. So one of the roles of EHRA is to monitor the health and the population of that group of elephants and keep a note of which ones are alive, the dominant male, all this kind of thing, keep track of the elephant population. But the other part of it is to help local people to live with elephants, to teach them what kind of precautions they have to take. Now, another thing that's a big problem in that area, and this is a broader issue anywhere where we have people and you have wild animals coming together. One of the things elephants can do, because they can be quite destructive, is to destroy infrastructure. And by that, I mean things like water towers that are set up to provide water for villages. And if you ever go to that part of Namibia, you'll find that there are lots of these smaller villages and they're quite well spread out. And they are very dry. It's very brown, it's very sandy, it's very dusty. So these water towers are very important, and people will be going by every day to get water, to give their animals water to drink. So cattle, donkeys, whatever they have. And it's not really helpful if an elephant comes through or a group of elephant come through and knock it down. So the project that I was involved with when I was there at the end of 2019 was to just help finish off this 2-meter high wall. It was a double ring made of stone with just gravel, anything we could find in between the two walls that were just made of stone that we could find, big lumps of rock, stone that we could find lying around. And it was 2 meters high, so that it was high enough for the elephants not to be able to get over it. There was a very narrow access inside the wall, but it was certainly far too small for an elephant to get in. In fact, I had to squeeze a little bit, and I'm not particularly big or wide. And that means that people have that infrastructure protected, and that's one of the ways that they can reduce the conflict or the problems that elephants are causing to local people. So that is essentially what they do. If you look at their website, and I'll put a link in the podcast description, they have a huge amount of information. It's a really good website. It tells you a lot about the animals, a lot about the history of elephants in that area, and a lot of information about what they're doing. So that's both in terms of tracking the animals, looking at their health, and also helping other people, the people who live there, to live with these elephants. So I decided, I heard about this 25th anniversary walk that's happening in September, and I like the idea of it, so I thought I would go. So I've started preparation for it, and that was really the purpose of doing this podcast. Now, I thought I would just do them every now and again, because this is a live prep for a trip into a pretty inhospitable area. And what I'll be doing when I get there is a 100k walk over 5 days. Part of it is tracking animals, we hope, tracking elephants. But we'll obviously see what happens when we get out there. So it's a small group, about 20 people is the target. So if this does interest you, you can find out more on the EHRA Namibia, I think is the name of the website. And sign up for it. Why not? So, and because it's a fundraiser, you can get funding. It's £2,000 to take part. So that's another option you have if you're concerned about the amount of money it takes to participate in this. So look, for most people, it's a chance for a lifetime. It's Namibia is amazing. I was so pleased to get there 5 years ago now, because it's one of those places I'd always wanted to visit. So preparation. So because there's a lot of walking involved, I've been doing a lot of walking, and that's really kicked off about 4 weeks ago. I started, and in fact I started slightly before then, but I decided to track myself on Strava and set myself a weekly goal. So the weekly goal at the moment is 25Ks a week, which doesn't sound that much, but it's, I think, a good place to start, because I don't do a lot of walking. My normal routine has me wandering into the village where I live, or the small town near where I live, and having a cup of coffee and buying my baguette. That's Sunday morning routine. So that's a nice little walk. But I don't do too much walking otherwise. And one of the things about where I live, it's in the country, so there's lots of lanes, places I can walk. It's hilly in places. There's an escarpment near where I live where there's a small airfield. And so there's a range of terrain. So what I'm doing, as I say, is give myself an initial target of 25Ks a week to cover. I'm tracking that on Strava, so it's public. So this is one of the things that I think helps motivate, well, it certainly helps motivate me. And I think if you are doing something and you want to keep at it until it becomes a habit, when you just do it automatically, it's good to be accountable. So this is my accountability thing. So I'm just exploring different walks. When I was living in Sydney, I had a really good 10K walk that I used to do a lot, and I could extend that to 17 if I walked all the way home, and I could extend it even further if I had started at Taronga Zoo in Sydney. So I actually don't know what the length of that walk was. I know it used to take me about 5 hours, so it's pretty long. And that was preparation for climbing Kilimanjaro. Now, Namibia is not going to be so hard in the sense of there's not too much climbing, but it is a rugged environment. So although we won't be at high altitude, which was one of the challenges with doing the Kilimanjaro climb, it is climbing every day. I mean, Kili took a week. That was 7 days of walking to do that one. So this is easier in one regard, but the important thing is not to underestimate it, because this is still a very harsh environment. It can get very hot in Namibia, and I take the view that the more preparation I can do, the stronger I can get my legs, the more stamina I can kind of muster when I need to, the better, because what I want to do when I'm there is enjoy it, and I think that's true for any travel that you do. So I thought I'd talk about all of this because it does relate to some types of travel, and given the sort of nature of this podcast, I thought it was relevant because you might be preparing for a trip of your own. Now, the other things, while I think of it, I've been through my documentation, so passports, or in fact I had to replace my Australian passport because it was expiring in October, and I've already replaced it because I like to do things well ahead of time. Here in France, it took, I think, 3 weeks to get the passport renewed, which was pretty good. But you need to think about these things, because in most countries, and I'm not just going to Namibia while I'm traveling, but in certainly a lot of countries, you need extra time on your passport. 6 months is the general rule. Make sure you have 6 months still remaining on your passport when you plan to be home. 3 months is adequate for a lot of countries, but 6 is the requirement for some. So obviously it's much easier just to go for the 6 month period. So that was one thing. I don't need a visa. I checked that as well. So for what I'm doing, it's, I'm not doing any kind of work or anything. It's essentially recreation. So that's a regular, just sort of arrive and we're all good. On the medication side, I do actually have a valid yellow fever certificate, but this is a common one in Africa. Now, in Namibia, I only need it if I'm coming from a country that has yellow fever. Now, I'll be going directly from France, so there's not too much yellow fever here, so that is all good. But I did have to run through my vaccinations and see what was what. I actually went and saw my doctor just to run through it with him. So I knew that my tetanus had expired, and generally you get a booster every 10 years, I think is still the requirement. So mine had run out last year. And that's a good one to have just working in the garden, because I've got a garden here. It's very easy to get scratched and get sort of small wounds. And if you get something infected, it's a kind of a silly thing to have to deal with. So I do recommend that you just keep your regular vaccinations up to date anyway, just for sort of general health. And then when it comes to things like these trips, you're already covered, so you don't have so many to think about. The other one was hepatitis B, I think it was. So I'm always terrible at this, so I write them down. And that also had expired. Now, the chances of me needing it where I'm going are, again, is pretty minimal. But I'd like to have the vaccinations there, and I would far rather just have the vaccination done before I go and have no problems than decide not to do it and then all of a sudden be in a place I don't know and potentially be in hospital with a serious illness. So the other thing is insurance. That's all in process. So that's the other thing to think about. Malaria was the other one, because again, with malaria, I always check to see what the current recommendations are. So I tend to look at the UK National Health Service is pretty good. Australia Health Advice, so British and Australian, so they're kind of the natural ones for me. World Health Organization is another one I'll check. So I'll just have a look and see what the recommendations are. And I have actually bought some malaria pills for while I'm traveling. Again, I don't know how likely I am to get bitten, and I prefer to go with prevention rather than cure. So I tend to wear long sleeved shirts, so very lightweight very kind of light beigey long sleeve shirts that dry out very quickly when they're washed. I also wear full length trousers, so just again very lightweight, very good for hiking and being in those hot environments. But it just gives me that extra layer of protection. So just protect against scratches, insect bites. Not that they're necessarily dangerous, but they can be just irritating. And so I like to cover myself up as much as possible when I'm away. And again, big floppy hats so that my ears and the back of my neck are covered from the sun. So all those kind of things. Now, the other thing I have invested in is a new pair of hiking boots, because my old pair, I think I've had them about 8 years now. They've had quite a lot of use. And I was looking at the treads of them actually underneath, and I thought there's not really, it was kind of marginal, and I decided to just sort of bite the bullet and buy a new pair. And I like to buy good quality hiking boots. And in fact, I found some online that were from the company that I've got my previous boots from, but they were €100 off. I think it's an older style, and I don't care, but it was €100 off, so they were €188. So, and that kind of equates, because when I bought my other ones, I was in Australia, and they were 400, I think 450 Aussie dollars. So I think it's worth spending extra money on good quality boots. Something I always go for are the boots that cover the ankles. So once you've tightened everything up, you have ankle support as well, and that has definitely saved me on a few occasions when I've just got my footing wrong, and it only takes a moment to get your footing wrong, and suddenly you just twisted your ankle at a strange angle, and having that extra support there just makes the difference. It just means you're not suddenly looking at something that's going to put you out of action for a bit, and given where I'm going to be going, absolutely not worth taking the risk. So that's where I'm at on the gear. I mentioned Strava and doing these walks. So as I've said, my aim is 25Ks a week. I was starting with small walks, really 4 to 5Ks, just to start getting into it more. Where I live, I can do some, about a 4K walk, but it's quite steep in places. So that definitely gets my heart rate going. And I don't go silly. I'm just going, pace myself, not get to the point where I can't speak, and just so totally out of breath. So that you really don't want to be pushing yourself. You need to be allowing your body to adjust gradually. So I've started with shorter walks, then longer walks, and these are now getting up to about 12, 13K, some of them. And my intention is to keep expanding those gradually. But what I'm also going to do is to use a small day pack that I have and put some water bottles in it with water in, and then use those to start adding some weight. So once I'm happy that my legs are feeling strong enough, and they're actually feeling pretty good, I've noticed over the last, certainly over the last week, through doing this regularly. So I walk 3 or 4 times a week now. And I've noticed my legs feel much stronger. I actually feel better in my body as well. I just feel more my posture seems to have improved. So it's quite a nice feeling when your body starts feeling strong. And I think the thing is, when you're not exercising, it's very easy to not notice that you're getting less and less fit until you try and do something. And all of a sudden, something that you might have done previously without really thinking about it is quite an effort. So that's where the plan is right now. But I've covered off the main parts of the documentation. The passport is one I like to get out of the way, because it's one that can potentially take time. And I always feel a little bit naked when I haven't got a passport, just in case I sort of have the urge or need to go away for some reason. So I like to get that done as soon as possible. So that's all done. The medical stuff I like to get out of the way as well. And with the injections that I actually had to have those on different days. So some vaccines you can take together, others you need to do separately. So that's just another reason for not leaving it to the last minute. And again, doing it sort of months ahead, it gives me plenty of time to have the vaccination if I have any reaction to it. Again, it's not going to give me any worries before I go away. So, as I say, I like to get these things done in plenty of time, and then I can get back to doing my walking, getting stronger. I'm also going to start doing swimming. I've got access to a swimming pool, so that is going to be another part of the routine, just for more of a general fitness. I think swimming is a very good exercise just for general health. So I'll mix that in with doing the walks. But the walk's the key thing because I'll be walking. There are some small exercises. One I was reminded of by a friend that I used to do ahead of Killy, and that was just to really help with my knee strength. And that's kind of gently lowering and raising the knee when you're sort of on the stairs and with the other knee out behind, and you wait until your toes touch the stair below. But I'm not going to give you tips on fitness because that's not my bag. But seriously, if you do want fitness, do chat to the physio or somebody. Go to a gym if you're a member, or if you're not a member, maybe think about it. I think if you are quite unfit and you're thinking about doing something like this, I do recommend, if you can, getting access to a trainer, just someone to help you with your general fitness. They can give you an assessment, and then just it's worth paying them maybe to see them once a week for a few weeks, and they'll take you through the routines until you know them well and see how you're progressing. But I find with training, and this also applies to when I was running, the more once I had some tips on what I needed to do, and by that I mean correcting your posture and making sure that you're actually doing exercises correctly, because the worst thing to do is to go and start doing exercises but you're doing them wrong, and therefore you're really not doing yourself any good at all. You're doing more harm than good. So if that's an option for you, I do recommend it. But yeah, get yourself fit before you go away. That even if you're not doing anything particularly arduous, it's just much nicer to go somewhere maybe that you've never been before, or maybe that you may not go to again, and just be fit enough, well enough to really enjoy where you are, and that sort of sets yourself up for the best possible experience while you're away. So, as I say, I will put the link to EHRA's website in the description for this podcast. So you're welcome to have a look at that in more detail. If that's something that floats your boat, then I believe there are still spots available. And this has been recorded on the 10th of June. So, there should still be spots available. If you're listening to this in December, we're already walking, and if you're listening to this after September, it's all done and dusted. So keep your eye out for the next 25 years. Right, that is it on this podcast. It's slightly different to what I normally do. It's not talking specifically about photography or wildlife, but I think just occasionally it's good to just talk about preparation for doing these trips, because this is something that I like to do when I go away, even if it's not a particularly tough one. I like to try and get a bit fitter, and then I'm just in a position where I can enjoy where I am. I'm not, suddenly out of breath all the time or any of this kind of stuff. Okay, that's it for this one. I will speak to you again in the next podcast. So bye for now. Oh, and one thing just before you go, please take a look at the 2026 wildlife calendar. That's available now. It's on the website. There's a link below the description of this podcast episode. So please take a look, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye now.